Good afternoon, Vatsal Javeri. Today's topic of discussion is compilation of the review article on heteroatom functionalized carbon dots for improving soil fertility. I am interested and glad to work with you on this review article, especially you devote your time for extracurricular activities like research, grant applications, research projects, research papers. That is the very reason why I want to continue with you on this interesting subject called carbon dots or carbon nano dots. Carbon materials are amazing. As you can see, every now and then we are finding new forms of carbon. For example, the discovery of fullerene, buckyball, another allotropic form of carbon, apart from diamond and graphite. Then graphene, a single layer of carbon atoms arranged in hexagonal lattice. Such astonishing discoveries can be anticipated, can be expected in the field of carbon materials. Carbon dots are one such interesting class of carbon materials that are causing ripples in the oceanic waters. These carbon nano dots are hydrophilic, means they are soluble in water. Very peculiar, isn't it? We know that carbon materials are hydrophobic. They do not dissolve in water. Whereas we have here carbon materials in spherical form of nano size that are soluble in water. Surprising, isn't it? Yes. Now, Vatsal will ask the question, why? Why carbon dots should be soluble in water while other analogs of carbon are insoluble in water. The reason is the extensive functional groups made up of oxygen atoms that are present on the surface of these carbon dots. As a result, these carbon dots are hydrophilic. And this attribute, this property of carbon dots, that is solubility in water, hydrophilicity, directly have implications on their biomedical applications. Cellular processes can be studied using these carbon dots as probes, sensors. These carbon dots can be used for diagnosis, therapy, and the list goes on and on and on. Leaving those wonderful applications aside for others to work upon, we will concentrate on the road that was less traveled, the path that was less traveled. Could be, maybe, if we take the path that is less traveled, we may end up in disappointment as well. But as researchers, we should be prepared to ending up in nothing as well. Yeah. The Curies hypothesized that in the ore of uranium called pitchblende, there could be possibly other elements that are far more radioactive than the known radioactive element then, that is uranium, because the observed or measured radioactivity values cannot be explained based on the radioactivity of uranium alone in the material called pitchblende. This new observation that could not be explained with the known knowledge made the Curies investigate more on the origin of unusual radioactivity emanating from the ore called pitchblende. The work of the Curies is an engineering marvel, the marvel of chemical engineering, and a great victory of human logic, reasoning, and the power of determination. The resources were almost nil. The encouragement was almost absent. Yet, Curies determined to venture into the road that is less traveled or almost forbidden. We see the consequence, we see the result. Out of a ton of a material, or even more, milligram quantities of the unknown material responsible for higher radioactivity than that need to be coming out from uranium was discovered, and the higher amounts of radioactivity were attributed to the presence of two new elements called radium and polonium. Naming of an element is the prerogative of the scientist that invents the new element. Of course, carbon dots are not a new element. I do not claim that, nor I am not the inventor of these carbon dots. I only say that discoveries as vital as the invention of radium and polonium are expected, hypothesized in the arena of carbon materials. Maybe more specifically in the area of biomass derived carbon materials. So the paths that are less explored, less taken up, need to be investigated thoroughly with bravery. This is the path the youngsters need to choose, especially coming to the area of research of carbon dots. Their application to agriculture is overlooked. Their application to the use as fertilizers is underestimated. So the objective of the compilation of the review article on the use of heteroatom functionalized carbon dots for agricultural applications is to increase the knowledge in the field of application of these carbon dots to the field of agriculture, because mainly India is the land of villages. India is the land of agriculture. Our inventions, our discoveries, our hard work should reach to majority of the population in India, so that majority of the population of India will be benefited, get impacted positively through such new knowledge. The existing knowledge will be briefly summarized. What are carbon dots? What are the special properties of carbon dots? What are the applications of carbon dots in various fields, with particular emphasis on heteroatom doped or heteroatom functionalized carbon dots. As I said, these carbon dots are hydrophilic, means they can easily penetrate into the soil through water. As water is absorbed by the soil, Along with water, these carbon nano dots will be absorbed into the soil, and at the root nodules, some beautiful biochemistry will be done. When we have the carbon dots doped or functionalized with special elements like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. The use of nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus for soil fertility, for the growth of plants, for the enhancement of crop yield need not be explained. We know conventional fertilizers. Most of the conventional fertilizers contain nitrogen. Such a knowledge is derived from nature. In nature, at the root nodules, there is an enzyme called nitrogenase. This nitrogenase is a smart being. We talk of artificial intelligence, so we should also talk of natural intelligence. When we say artificial photosynthesis, it means that there is something called natural photosynthesis. When we say artificial intelligence, it means there is something called natural intelligence. When we say human intelligence, there is something called higher divine intelligence. In the beautiful book by Reverend Edward McKendry Bounds writes so beautifully on the higher realms of intelligence, higher levels of intelligence. I do not recollect the book, the name of the book. Edward McKendry Bounds has written so many books, as many as 15 books on a single subject called prayer. Likewise, these days, hundreds of papers are being published on a single subject called carbon dots. This is the problem I face as a teacher, especially when I teach to undergraduate and postgraduate students. The students misunderstand me to teach other aspects not related to their curriculum. This problem I do not face when I teach to research scholars. Of course, there is a barrier. Example is better than precept. I deviate definitely from chemistry to non-chemistry, chemistry to the world. I travel from the four walls of the classroom to Korea, to Israel, to China. There are three kinds of teachers: average teacher, good teacher, and the best teacher. Average teacher gives only what is present in the curriculum or the book. The average teacher cannot deviate anything from the book because the teacher himself or herself may not be aware of the world. The good teacher is the one that teaches the subject with example and teaches the application of the subject being taught to daily life. The best teacher is the one that prepares the students to face the real challenges in the world and equips them with the knowledge so that they can be independent, they can be confident, they can live with self-respect soon after their academic endeavor is completed. They can make their livelihood and they can contribute to the growth of the society. This is the work of the best teacher. prepares the student to face the challenges ahead, makes the student sustainable in his future endeavors. That's what I do as a teacher in the class. Though I often deviate from the mainstream of teaching. Coming back to the work of Edward McHenry Bounds, yeah, many have misunderstood Edward McHenry Bounds in those days. People have the tendency to say that, oh, the whole church is behind Edward McHenry Bounds. Whole of the Methodist Church is with Edward McHenry Bounds. Why he will not write many books? Writing books will be so obvious when there is so strongly funded church. Behind Edward McHenry Bounds. Truly, very few people know the reality. Often, Edward McHenry Bounds was penniless. He used to write most of his writings on the used envelope covers, the waste papers that he collects in the places around him. In most unfavorable circumstances, in absolute poverty, Edward McHenry Bounds compiled most of his works, and none of the publications or none of the works of Edward McHenry Bounds has seen the light of publication when E.M. Bounds was alive. Fortunately, today we have all digital revolution, so that, if the author were to be treated unfairly by the publishers, the author can reach out to the audience through digital media, like what the present teacher is doing. Even though no student were to present, if the students were to not attend the online planned Zoom meeting, the teacher continues with recording the message and passing on to them so that they can go through the message whenever they have the free time. Edward McHenry Bounds used to do that. In spite of the many difficulties he faced with publication concerning the publication of his work, E.M. Bounds continued to write. And he professed that at one point of time, God will make a person rise. God will raise a person to publish my work, to bring my manuscripts in the form of printed books. With that hope, E.M. Bounds continued, and his hope bear fruit indeed, and all his work has been published in the form of books. There are several examples of his works, like The Weapon of Prayer, Prayer, The Necessity of Prayer, Prayer and Praying Men, and the list is indeed big. Some 13 or 15 books are there. Likewise, whether our work is received or rejected, the researcher need to be persevering, continuing in his efforts as Curie's pursued, continued to prove their hypothesis that indeed they are true, that indeed there is or there are radioactive elements far more radioactive than uranium present in the ore called pitchblende, contributing to the observed higher radioactivity. Owing to their strenuous, steadfast, consistent, and dedicated hard work, the Curies were awarded the Nobel Prize in the year 1903. Sweet are the uses of adversity. After that, in due course of time, Madame Curie lost her husband, faced many difficulties, but continued persevering in the field of scientific research. And this time, in the year 1911, the second Nobel Prize was awarded to Madame Curie in the field of chemistry. Even teachers have limited memory power. The first Nobel Prize in 1903 was awarded to the Curies in the field of physics for the discovery of the phenomena of radioactivity. The second Nobel Prize was solely awarded to Madame Curie in the year 1911 in the field of chemistry. So, the story is a century-old story. Thinking that people will laugh at our mistakes, we should not shut our mouth. This is what I teach the students in the class. Silence is no longer considered as wisdom. I allow the students to do mistakes. I give the students the needed courage to speak. Even if it is wrong, the students should open their mouth and express what is there in their mind. The teacher will refine and make the thought process pure. This is possible only when the student opens his mind and heart and speaks in the class. That is possible only when the teacher encourages the students to do mistakes. Continuing further, such breakthroughs in the field of science are expected in the first half of the 21st century. That is, during this period, in the field of nuclear fusion. Not only in nuclear fusion energy, such breakthroughs are expected during the first half of 21st century in the field of biomass conversion to energy, like hydrogen production, like carbon dioxide reduction to fuels and chemicals. In the next few decades, we will see such breakthroughs in the field of chemistry in particular. Already, batteries received due recognition and good enough, and his colleagues were awarded Nobel Prize for lithium-ion batteries. Likewise, for organic chemistry as well, due recognition was given, and during the past 2 consecutive years, Nobel Prize was awarded to the research on or in organic chemistry, whether it is click chemistry or some other chemistry. Especially the work of Barry K. Sharpless, Barry III Sharpless is remarkable. Remarkable achievement. None of his contemporaries had such astounding record of winning 2 Nobel Prizes in chemistry. Of course, Linus Pauling. Linus Pauling won 2 Nobel Prizes, one in chemistry in recognition of his work on chemical bonding, nature of chemical bonding. And the second Nobel Prize for his work in promoting peace. Likewise, the Curie, Madame Curie won Nobel Prize in physics, and her second Nobel Prize was in the field of chemistry. Karl Sharpless was awarded 2 Nobel Prizes in the field of chemistry. None of the contemporaries of, Sharpless had such a remarkable recognition. We are indeed fortunate to see such a great scientist during our times. It's a rare coincidence. By coincidence, what I mean is such a thing has happened in 1911 and 1903 during the 20th century. Such a thing has happened in the life of Sharpless during our times. This is what I mean by coincidence. Of course, we have not seen Curie winning such recognition. We are fortunate to see Barry K. Sharpless, to see his achievements, which are indeed a source of motivation. Coming back to the mainstream, such breakthroughs are expected in the realm of carbon materials and in the field of biomass conversion to fuels and chemicals, especially in the realm of converting carbon dioxide to fuels and chemicals and producing hydrogen from biomass. Because once we have energy based on nuclear fusion or hydrogen, the future is sustainable. And we can guarantee our future generations clean, unpolluted environment. Nuclear fusion, if we succeed, that will be indeed an epochal discovery, because in one go, we are solving 2 problems. The problem of nuclear waste management is solved, and the problem of vast energy reserve is also solved. We will have a vast energy source, as well as that is pollution free, the energy that is pollution free. Such breakthroughs are expected in this crucial hour of history, that is the first part of 21st century, as it has been in the first part of 20th century. So the scientific community need to work on a war footing with vigor. Who knows? There may be a race in the field of catalysis. There may be a race in the field of nuclear energy, as the race that has begun with the discovery of neutron by James Chadwick. When James Chadwick discovered the chargeless particle neutron, nobody thought that, it will end up in a nuclear arms race. The race began. The French group, the Berlin group, the Rome group, and many world famous research groups work together. Of course, the end is a disaster that has resulted in the invention of the little man and the fat boy. Of course, learning from the history the current day scientists must adopt the ethics, and humane attitude of Madam Lise Meitner. Madam Lise Meitner is a remarkable scientist. Of course, the achievements of Madame Curie were recognized, and the achievements of Lise Meitner, Madame Lise Meitner, were unrecognized. This is the only difference. Lise Meitner has contributed enormously to the field of nuclear science. It is Lise Meitner that has hypothesized that enormous amount of energy will be released in the event of the fission of the nucleus. By analyzing the results of the work of Otto Hahn, it is Madam Lise Meitner that has proposed the term nuclear fission. Until then, nobody knows. There could be something like, fission of nucleus, breaking down of nucleus into two parts, splitting of atomic nucleus. Nobody has ever dreamt. Such breakthroughs are expected during the first part of 21st century, and the scientific community need to be vigilant. Again, if I were to teach in the class, my students will be for sure thinking I have deviated much and I am talking other things. Unfortunately, I am ahead of time, so there is every chance that the audience think that I speak other things. Of course, they are not irrelevant altogether. I make scientists. I make talented youth. I make the manpower needed for the nation. So I must deviate from the curriculum. I must deviate from the century-old books and give the contemporary developments, the new breakthroughs happening all around to my students. Fortunately, as a researcher, I refer or review or edit at least one paper a day for various publishing houses. So that makes me abreast with the current updates of science. This makes my teaching a fruitful endeavor where I transfer the new knowledge to the students. Vatsal, to close the session, I give the current version of the manuscript to you. I have seen the articles you have collected from elsewhere, MDPI. Some articles from ACS and RSC publishing houses are missing. There are many publications in ACS and RSC journals on heteroatom doped carbon materials. I myself have published one article on nitrogen and sulfur containing carbon dots in analytical methods. Nitrogen and sulfur containing carbon dot was used as a sensor for ampicillin. Likewise, nitrogen containing carbon dot was used as sensor for urea. Yeah. These two papers were already published by me in the field. So I must be allowed to speak on the subject and not labeled as speaking other things. Thank you, audience, for your attention. Goodbye.